Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, July 15th. LA Galaxy getting ready for a midweek matchup with Colorado, who sits in fourth place just behind them. And then, of course, we have to talk about the loss to Dallas over the weekend. Dallas continues to be just the absolute nightmare for the LA Galaxy. Now 0-8-0 in the last 8 games they've played in Frisco, outscored 21-4 in those games. Galaxy coming off of a loss. We're going to talk about that. Plus, there is so much news, so much cleanup. The retrograde kit coming out. We got information on that. MLS All-Star Game. There's a lot here, so buckle up for a little bit. We're gonna keep you entertained at least for 60 minutes or so. To help me do all this, welcome back to the show, Mr. Kevin, the Panda, Baxter. Kev, how you doing?
I don't know about the entertaining part. By the way, this is my swan song. I'm out of here.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, say it again because I stepped on you.
I'm going to the Olympics. I go to the airport Thursday for my flight Friday.
Right.
Anyone who's flown out of LAX know how that works. You go there and you spend the night before because you'll never get there if you try to come in the morning.
Right.
And get to Paris on Saturday, and I will be there until August 18th for the Olympic Games.
So yeah, we will miss you for a little while here. I imagine as a runner at Cal State Fullerton, whenever you were out doing your long distance running, Kevin, doing all the stuff that you were good at, you were like, I was always going to go to the Olympics. And look, you were right. You were absolutely right.
This is my fifth Olympics. 0 medals so far, but my 5th Olympics. And by the way, I appreciate. I'm only going to miss one game. I'll be here for the Wednesday Colorado game, and then when I land Saturday, it's the Portland game. I will not miss an MLS game because of Leagues Cup, and I want to thank. Actually, I don't want to thank MLS. I hate Leagues Cup. But by the way, I did learn a couple of things last week. First of all, I learned when you were off doing your bathroom emergencies with your son.
Yes.
I learned unequivocally that I cannot do this where I think I'm a decent sidekick. I'm kind of like the Ed McMahon to your Johnny Carson.
Okay.
Kids, you can Google that, find out what that means.
That's being awful generous to yourself, but okay. And also to me, so.
So yeah, I mean, the thing is when you went away and I was just talking, you're used to talking to yourself and not having anyone respond. I'm not. So it kind of threw me. I was like saying stuff and like there was no reaction from anybody. It's really a lot harder than you think it is. You're really good at it, but it's really a lot harder than you think it is. And the other thing I found out last week is a lot of people listen to the show. The lovely and talented Mrs. Panda was at the National Association of Hispanic Journalists conference. Mm-hmm. And when she was outed as the Mrs. Panda,
right,
a lot of people came up to her and said, "Oh, I listen to the pod. I like the pod. I listen to the pod all the time." There's one woman here. His business card is. Told her I'd give her a shout out. Sharon Orbitz. I hope I said that right. I doubt I did. She's a journalism professor at Santa Monica College. And so the shout out to her. She is a loyal pod listener as well.
Hey, Sharon, thanks for listening. We certainly appreciate that. And I just want you to know that you met the better half of Mr. Kevin Baxter. Mrs. Panda is way cooler than Kevin is ever. It's the only reason I still hang out with Kevin is because I know his wife and she's way cooler than he is. So, if for some reason anything you couldn't do it, I think she'd be better on this podcast than you, 100%.
Well, she could talk. I mean, she's used to talking and not having anyone respond too.
Yeah, just stare ahead, nod and smile for you. Okay, good. Glad to get there. We have a bunch of excuse the foul language so early in the pod. We have a bunch of crap to go through here, Kevin. And thank you, MLS. I guess thank you, LA Galaxy. I guess thank you, Soccer Canada. Thank you, U.S. Soccer, for all of this junk that we are about to attempt to try to clean up. But let's start with the news that certainly wasn't a Friday afternoon news dump. Nobody would ever do that. Not Friday at 5 o'clock. Yes.
When MLS called me, it was 5 o'clock, 5:30 on a Friday night, and the first thing they said is, "This is not a Friday night news dump." And I said, "What night is it?"
Yeah, I was going to say.
Friday night. Are you going to give me some news? Are you dumping some news on me? Therefore, it is a Friday night news dump, and it was horrible.
It's Friday night, and the moon is right. Gonna have some fun, show you how it's done. TGIF. Sorry, that just popped in my head as you were talking about the Friday afternoon, Friday night news dump. This statement came out shortly, as you pointed out, around 5:45 p.m. On Friday, July 12th. This from Major League Soccer, and it says Major League Soccer today announced sanctions against the LA Galaxy. Let's break that for a second. Announced sanctions against the LA Galaxy following serious misconduct by Galaxy fan supporters groups during their match against LAFC on July 4th. I'll add at the Rose Bowl for failing to meet required safety protocols. The LA Galaxy have been fined $100,000 and will be subject to league oversight related to security and supporter management processes. In coordination with MLS, the LA Galaxy agreed to conduct a full investigation of the incident, and violators will be subject to further penalties, indefinite bans, and all appropriate legal action. The comprehensive review will focus on improving security and supporter management processes moving forward. Supporter privileges for all LA Galaxy supporters groups, inclusive of home and away matches, are indefinitely suspended pending the completion of MLS and the LA Galaxy's comprehensive review. Now, Kevin, how is this possible? Because I believe we were on the podcast not too long ago, and we were talking, and they said that there was going to be no action from Major League Soccer. So how did that happen?
Well, let's back up a little bit and go through the history. I was at the LAFC playoff game last year when an identical thing. I would have to say, from my vantage point, and this is just my viewpoint from the press box, the flares at the Rose Bowl looked to be more dangerous than the pyrotechnics that LAFC used. The LAFC pyrotechnics did delay the start of a playoff game several minutes because the smoke covered the field. In the Galaxy case, the flares, again, looked pretty dangerous. It was very crowded in that area, appeared to me. The smoke did go onto the field, and Hugo Lloris, who was the goalkeeper for LAFC, was right in front of that net. He had to go out to midfield to get out of the smoke. It didn't delay the game. It didn't slow the game down. They didn't stop the game, but there was smoke on the field. Anyway, my point was going to be, this game was on a Thursday. Friday morning, I called MLS and said, look, I know it's a holiday weekend, but this thing that happened at the game was eerily similar to what LAFC did. They got exactly those penalties you just talked about, $100,000 suspension, and for the supporters groups, supporter privileges rather, suspended. And so I asked MLS, what are you going to do against the Galaxy? And they said that they would get back to me as soon as they made a decision. If you remember the Sunday game at home, there were no drums, there was no capo stands, there were no flags, banners. And the Galaxy apparently took that measure with the supporters and decided that this was going to be the penalty. I got a call from MLS Monday morning, and they said, hey, I know you wondered about what sanctions we're taking. We're totally happy with what the Galaxy did. There will be no further sanctions. That's it. It's done. We're moving on. I called the Galaxy. I said, is this your understanding as well? And my good, close, personal Puerto Rican friend, Kevin Acevedo, I reached him in Joshua Tree, where he was having a day off, and he told me that was the understanding the club had been told, or the club understood that there would be no further sanctions. And then on Friday, I get a call from MLS saying, hey, remember that release you got from us last year about LAFC? We just took LAFC out and put Galaxy in, and it's the same penalties.
Right.
Now, did supporters from LAFC, did the club complain? How come we got penalized and the Galaxy didn't? Seemed to be similar, and they have a case. It was very similar. But obviously, MLS totally reversed itself. Now, the argument I got on Friday when I said, wait a minute, 4 days ago, you guys told me that nothing was going to happen.
Right.
And they said, yeah, we don't know how that happened. That was a mistake. We were actually still reviewing the case. No, you weren't. You said you weren't reviewing the case. You said you had made your decision and you were satisfied. So something happened in the intervening days. Somebody complained. Somebody decided to review it. I don't know how high up it went, but the sanctions are, again, almost identical, if not totally identical, to the sanctions LAFC received last year.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I was surprised that sort of MLS was just going to leave it and that was going to be it. But then to go back and say, oh no, it's all these other things. It looks bad for them. They would have been fine had they come out with these right away and said, yeah.
Right. If they had said that on Friday or Monday, this is what we're going to do, I don't think there would have been a peep. Everyone would have said just fine. But for them to say no penalties, oh, wait a minute. What we meant to say was lots of penalties. It just strikes me as being very strange.
It is very strange. But I mean, so that wraps that part up. The big deal is that LA Galaxy supporters being sanctioned both home and away. So we will see what that looks like against Colorado on Wednesday. We'll see what that looks like against Portland on Saturday. So there's a lot of stuff still to be watched here and see how long these penalties extend for the LA Galaxy. And the $100,000, quite honestly, being fined, the LA Galaxy being fined for, is a significant amount of money too. It's not nothing. I know a lot of times we look at the money that goes around in Major League Soccer, and $100,000 is still a lot of money in Major League Soccer, right? It's $100,000 is a lot of money in Major League Baseball. Like there's I don't think there's any league, even in the NFL, $100,000 is a lot of money. Whenever you're talking about fines and other things, so it's significant what was done here. So is what it is.
So the Galaxy are undefeated at home. I don't count the Rose Bowl. I know it's a home game. I don't count it as a home game. It's not at Dignity Health Sports Park. They're undefeated in their building. Do you think that this possibly, the lack of supporters and or potential lack of supporters, do you think that's going to have an effect? I mean, they've been very successful at home with the status quo, and now that's changed.
The Sunday game was significantly quieter against Minnesota.
But they won.
They did in late heroics, thanks to Gabriel Peck there. But I don't know. I would love to say no, and I would love to say yes, and I'd love to be definitive about it, and then we could argue back and forth about why that is the case. I'd like to see how the LA Galaxy play. Just, in terms of, they're not playing the best right now. You look at the Dallas game, and then you coming off the LAFC game. We could go back, and there's sort of this pattern that's sort of starting to evolve for the LA Galaxy whenever it comes to not having Joveljic and these other things. So that's something to watch, maybe more than what the supporters sound like, what they look like in the thing. I would imagine that it's gonna be similar in terms of no capo stands, no flags, no drums, that type of thing, and not necessarily limiting the supporters except for those that they have probably identified through video and that type of thing. So I don't think they're going to make the supporters not be able to show up. But I do think that with the lack of noise production that is able to happen in there, that it'll be a different environment and be something to watch. So we'll watch it on Wednesday night. We'll watch it on Saturday night. It's going to be one of those. Go ahead.
And you say, well, how did it affect LAFC? They haven't lost a game at home. They hadn't lost a game at home until this last weekend when they got blown out by Columbus. They didn't play another home game after that. They went to play MLS Cup on the road, and then the new season started.
Right.
So, they had much more time to sort of adjust and figure out what the lay of the land was. I guess maybe just the other fans in the stands that aren't sitting in the Victoria block, they're going to have to make it up. They're going to have to make up for the lack of noise. They're going to have to get a little bit louder.
We'll see how that all goes up, but it doesn't stop this little bump in the road doesn't stop the craziness that is MLS. And so we want to talk about the transfer windows, because for some crazy, actually I know the reason. But basically, for the first time ever, the Canadian-based MLS clubs are going to have a different transfer window, by the way, that's already open for the Canadian-based clubs, than the U.S.-based MLS clubs. Tell me what league on the face of this dang planet, Kevin, has two separate rules within the two countries that it plays for.
Well, it has to do with the difference in value of the Canadian dollar versus the U.S.
I'm sure that's
or
what
maybe
it is.
It has to do with the opening of NHL training camps.
So the real deal here is that Soccer Canada has to deal with the Canadian Premier League, right? Because they have a quote unquote division. Is it Division 1? Are they getting Division 1 sanctioning for the Canadian Premier League? I imagine that it's Division 1 in Canada, and there's also Division 1
in Canada because MLS is considered a US based
right.
league.
Exactly. So but they have Division 1 CPL to pay attention to. Now, that's how do I say this without offending how many Canadian listeners do you think we have? Like this, like 2, 3? Like, who am I going to make mad whenever I say this? The Canadian Premier League is a fake league. It's on par with probably the USL, in not even USL Championship, maybe USL 1. There aren't that many teams. The problem with this particular one is that Soccer Canada wanted to make sure that the transfer window for the CPL was advantageous to the CPL teams. They actually went to FIFA and asked for a waiver and said, hey, can we have two different, like, hey, can our MLS teams that are in Canada, can they just match up with the MLS ones? And then we can just have the Canadian Premier League's time on a different one. We just want the two separate dates. That way we can keep MLS with MLS and the CPL with CPL. And so FIFA said, no, absolutely not. Can't do that. Right. And so that would have been a nice solution. So instead, what Soccer Canada decided to do was have a different transfer window. This is on Soccer Canada, because they're the ones who said they needed this 5-day difference, this 6-day difference between these two. They had to have it. It was life or death. You have to do it. And this is Soccer Canada flexing a little bit of its muscle. And I don't think they have much to stand on, although certainly their national team doing better than the United States' national team right now. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fairness across a league, and you have a competing league in the CPL against Major League Soccer, very rightfully so. And so now you're getting two separate transfer windows. So the transfer window opens on July 12th and goes through August 8th for Canadian-based MLS clubs. This is Montreal, this is Toronto, and this is Vancouver. There are 3 Canadian teams. They have a different transfer
window is already open,
and they can make moves. And then coming up on July 18th to August 14th is when U.S.-based MLS clubs will do it. This seems like it's the biggest Mickey Mouse BS I've seen in a long time. It may not have a huge impact on anything, but it looks so bad. And to me, if you can't, as U.S. Soccer and Major League Soccer, and I look at Major League Soccer on this. Yes, they're not the governing body for this, but they're the common thread between these two, Kevin, for me, is how do you not hold your league together like this? Are we starting to see the breakup of the Canadian teams? They're going to go up, they're going to stay north of the border. They're going to go join the Canadian Premier League, and then the MLS is going to be solely US based. Is that what's going to happen? Because this feels like there's just a little tiny run in the stockings of MLS here.
Well, I know of no serious effect that has had this year. However, theoretically, you have to look at what could it mean. What it could mean is that window opened on the 12th, which was Friday. That means if a Canadian team, MLS team, brought in a transfer, that player could play in 3 games before the League's Cup break and the All-Star break. Could play in 3 games. For the USL or for the MLS teams in the US, the window opens on Thursday. They've already missed the Sunday game or the weekend game. They've already missed the midweek game. They get 1 game before the League's Cup break. If there was a close playoff race, a Supporters Shield race or whatever, the Canadian team gets 2 free shots with their transfer guy, and the US-based team does not. And they're in the same league, in the same conference, maybe playing each other. I mean, theoretically, there could be a situation where Montreal plays New England on Sunday with their new guy, and then they play New England the next game, match day, Wednesday. They still have their new guy. New England's guy can't play yet.
Yeah, it's great. Major League Baseball doesn't have this problem, right? I mean, and you can sit there and say NBA doesn't have this problem, right? Because the CPL is a competing league at D1. It boggles my mind. And again, to me, this says not all is healthy within the 2 confederations, how they're dealing with each other and their relationships with Major League Soccer. Maybe things need to be a little more arm's length for that. But I would think that the most successful league in North America outside of, and I should say the U.S. and Canada, because certainly not Liga MX, but whenever you look at U.S. and Canada and what they've been able to accomplish with Major League Soccer, you would think everybody would want to pull on the same end of that rope in order to compete against, the Mexican league. And you're not seeing that, right? Now you have a division, and it's small, and it's maybe minute, and maybe it doesn't matter, but it feels like it matters, Kevin, and it feels like this is bigger. To me, I saw this, I cracked up. I said, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, that you're going to have 2 different transfer windows. What are you going to have? Maybe Soccer Canada wants to start their league early, so the Canadian teams get to play, a month earlier, or maybe they're going to play 2 months later because, of all this. It's just, there's stupid stuff going on, and I think it might point at the overall health of a league that isn't all together there. That's my take. All opinions are your own on this show. I don't want to speak for Kevin or anybody else, but yeah, it's something's goofy here.
Well, and you look at this and you say, well, okay, they created this for the team in Ottawa in the Canadian Premier League to get a player, and they're going to get a 3rd division player from England, and it doesn't really matter. That's true. That's probably what is going on. The majority of the transfers are going to come in to these Canadian Premier League teams. But it does open the window, no pun intended, it does open the window for Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto to bring in some players and get a 3-game advantage over their MLS rivals because the transfer window opened early.
Crazy. More cleanup to do. This is from the LA Galaxy, and these were the short-term loans that came up. One, Isaiah Parente brought up on a short-term on a 1-year deal through the end of the 2024 MLS season that is with the LA Galaxy. So Isaiah Parente signed to the LA Galaxy on that deal through the end of the 2024 season. I believe there's also 2 or 3 option years on that as well. So Isaiah Parente getting some time over the weekend as well. He is now up with the first team, and that is locked in, especially as they await the return of Johnny Perez and Gaston Brugman, some other guys. They needed some help there. The other player they brought up for a short-term agreement was Ruben Ramos Jr., who has been just killing it at every level that he's been at. You saw him, I believe this is his second time up with the first team, and maybe his second game in that as well. So he is also up there on a short-term agreement from Ventura County FC. He may be tapped out for the rest of the season. I feel like you can only play in 2 or 3 games whenever you get called up. I'll look that up and have it for Thursday, but that's something that is there as well. So I believe that cleans up most of our stuff that we have. Kevin, before we now have to transition and look at the game in Dallas. But it's not often we get 20 minutes into a show that had a game on a Saturday and we haven't yet talked about the game because there's other junk in the way. So
yeah, but there's other news coming up too.
There is. We still have so much more. LA Galaxy 2-0 losers at FC Dallas up in Frisco, Texas. Again, 0-8-0 in their last 8 games in Frisco, outscored 21-4. That's just super interesting to me that this continues. At some point, I think the LA Galaxy should just say, we're not getting on the plane to go to Frisco because it's not worth the travel. It's not worth being in the heat. It's not worth being in everything else for that. And then going and then getting your butt kicked by Dallas. And by the way, not uncommon during the 0-8-0. I think there were only a couple one goal games in that. Most of the time it was multiple goals.
Dallas had twice as many goals as Galaxy had shots on goal.
That is correct. And we look at the starting lineup. The biggest thing here is, of course, one that no Dejan Joveljic, which we knew, likely to be shut down here through Leagues Cup, right? It seems that that's likely. So they're going to be managing that and paying attention. But this was a new look lineup for the LA Galaxy with Joseph Paintsel possibly playing in that front. He ended up not being that way, by the way. Diego Fagundes was the guy who was up front. Joseph Paintsel sometimes coming in and combining and trading off with Fagundes in that. But this was the Miguel Berry-less lineup that I think everybody was looking for. And I will say we have no idea whether or not this works. And if you went and watched that game at all, if you listened to Greg Vanny, if you did anything that you could possibly take a look at whenever you watch this game, you would see that there was very little effort, it seemed, on the LA Galaxy's part to really stay physically in this game, to try to stay up to the pace of play and try to attack a Dallas team that was very comfortable playing a little bit in a low block and then countering their way to 2 goals and 2 easy goals at that. As Kevin pointed out, 1 shot on goal. We've seen this now, Kevin. Here's the big thing, and I even asked Greg Vanny this after it. We've seen this from the LA Galaxy now. Look at the Chicago game. Greg pointed out the Chicago game was the 3rd of 3, so maybe a little different situation than Dallas. I will say Chicago, Austin, and Dallas. What do all 3 of those games have in common? No Dejan Joveljic. That is the answer. And they lost all 3 of them. So outside the Galaxy have 5.
2 of them were in Texas.
2 of them were in Texas. Good point. So the Galaxy have lost 5 games. 2 of those come to LAFC. I would say the Galaxy didn't play well in those, but were generally involved in the games whenever they played. You want to talk about the Galaxy's flattest performances of the year? It was Chicago, it was Austin, it was Dallas, and all 3 of those games featured Miguel Berry in some form or fashion up top. In this particular case, didn't happen until the second half, but you had Diego Fagundes playing in a false 9. Greg Vanny sort of it was indicating that after the game. You got Joseph Paintsel, you got Peck. This was supposed to be the lineup that was the answer for Miguel Berry not being super productive whenever he's a starter and Dejan Joveljic being out, and we did not see anything from that. But I'm not sure that was a good representation of what that lineup could possibly do. But the fact that Greg Vanny changed out of it at halftime also indicates to me that he was not happy with how he saw it and how it played. What did you think?
Yeah, well, again, Gabriel Peck still continues to play really well. They had 9 shots total. 3 of them were from Peck. He had the only shot on goal. I do not like the idea, as you said, it didn't really turn out that way. I don't like the idea of Paintsel playing in the middle. I think he's a winger. I think he needs to be out and he needs to run. Fagundes tried to fill that role. It didn't really work. As Greg said afterwards, he goes, we sort of had guys hanging around the 9 position, but we really didn't have a 9.
Right.
but yet he didn't change the formation or the strategy, at least in the first half. So he's saying, look, we don't have a 9, but we're going to play like we do. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Either you need to come up with a new way to attack, or you need to find a new formation, or you need to get someone to play that 9 position. Because if you're going to play like Joveljic is there and he's not there,
right,
someone's got to fill that role, and no one can do that. And no one has that skill set. And this is something, we have to say on this show that we talked about this way back in February. We talked about this from Coachella. We said we think Dejan Joveljic is going to have a really good season, but he's injury prone. He does tend to get hurt and miss stretches, and there's no one to back him up. And we saw this back then. We thought maybe Miguel Berry would be okay,
right,
because he had a pretty good preseason, but it became obvious early in the year that he was not going to be able to be the Dejan Joveljic's understudy, that there was going to be a huge drop-off, and that's exactly what happened. The Galaxy have lost 2 of their last 3 games. This is their sort of the start of a midsummer slump. We don't know how long it'll go on, but
right,
the LAFC game, they looked pretty good. They could have come back and at least drawn that game. This game was not on that level.
Well, and you look at the Minnesota game, and they struggled a little bit in that game whenever Joveljic came out, right? And so he was out in the second half, and Miguel Berry came in. The Galaxy struggled. They eventually got the winner from Gabriel Peck. I'm not saying the Galaxy didn't have chances in this game, but a lot of them were from outside the box. Gabriel Peck missing just a couple chances there. Joseph Paintsill being played in and still not there. I'm expecting that Joseph Paintsill finds his form shortly after Leagues Cup here, because I think that everything his body is telling him right now is that he's in the offseason, right? He's been playing for how many years as a professional, and he's never had to play through July and August like this, right? Outside of some national team stuff and things like that he's probably done. He's never had to put up with this many games. He is going on, 60 plus games, I believe, at this point, from nonstop. So I think him coming back in, his body sort of readjusting, getting everything back and pointing in the right direction, I think he's going to be okay. But he was, rather toothless in this game, but so were the LA Galaxy. They were toothless. Greg Vanney talked about it. Possession that doesn't necessarily try to find runners in behind. Possession that doesn't necessarily create the overloads that they want. And he really called it, a lack of physical effort, which was being able to run whenever you're trying to get back on defense. We can talk about the defensive breakdowns. I will say that some of that had a lot to do with a midfield that did not want to run and did not want to track back. Whenever you have somebody like John Nelson on the left-hand side who's involved in an attack that almost scores, and then the Galaxy get countered on that same side, nobody, Joseph Paintsill, came back to help John Nelson get all the way back there, and they end up beating him in behind on that side in order to get that first goal. You have to help guys out. You can't expect guys to be in the attack and then come back. This is a work rate issue in Dallas. And, they talked about it, 93 degrees and all the humidity that was going on there. That's fine. That's normal Dallas stuff. And, everything that I think we sort of expected from the Dallas game. You can't be stupid with the ball the way the Galaxy were. They didn't control the game well, Kevin, and Maya Yoshida said so afterwards. They didn't control the game. That means they weren't able to rest when they wanted to, and that meant Dallas was able to run all over them. But for me, one shot on goal. We could go back and look at the stats, and you could look at the XG on this, 0.4 for the LA Galaxy. All right, 0.4. 1.9 for Dallas, 0.4 for the LA Galaxy. 20 shots to 11 shots. All right, 6 shots on target for Dallas, 1 shot on target for the LA Galaxy. And if I remember correctly, the shot on target wasn't even that great, right? So it wasn't even, they had better ones that just missed the frame and all those other things. There is
go ahead. Speaking of Maya Yoshida, he came out in the 66th minute. I think these are the first minutes he's missed all season.
Yep.
And also shout out to Mark Delgado. He came out at halftime, but he also is the 68th player in Major League history to have 300 MLS appearances. So shout out to him. The Galaxy, it's good news and bad news here. The Galaxy, to me, are clearly limping into the Leagues Cup break. However, and so the League Cup break comes at a good time. They'll hopefully be able to rest Paintsill. Hopefully Joveljic will get better, come back. Brugman is out of the country getting his green card taken care of. Hopefully he'll be healed up. Audi will maybe come back after Leagues Cup. So the MLS break is coming at the right time. There is a danger, of course, if they don't advance an MLS or Leagues Cup, then they wind up sitting for a month like they did last year. That may not be that bad in that you're trying to get a lot of players healed anyways. But for the rest of the team, for the healthy guys, that's really going to get them out of rhythm. So I think the Galaxy, they have San Jose their first game in Leagues Cup, I believe. If they can win that game, they might advance. They don't need to go deep. They don't need to win the trophy. They just need to play so they're not sitting around. But they clearly are limping into this break. Now, they could come back Wednesday and have a great game. I don't foresee that. I think they are on fumes right now, so the break's coming at a good time. Here's another thing that's good. Right now, they're still tied for first place on points, 43 points. even if they lose their next 2 games, which are to teams chasing them in the playoff race, Colorado is 4th, Portland is 5th. Even if they lose both those games, the lowest they can drop is at 4th, and that would mean Colorado would have to win both of its games. Portland can't catch them. So they're going to go into the break no worse than 4th, which is a home playoff berth, which is what they wanted, and they'll have 8 games left when they come back.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. There's some games in hand for some of the other teams. You have Salt Lake with 23 games played. You have LAFC with 22, so they have 2 games to make up in the same span. The LA Galaxy will have 8. So we'll watch those as it sort of breaks down and how those games in hand sort of play out. Vancouver has 2 games in hand. Houston has 2 games in hand. There's a bunch with 1 game in hand. So the Galaxy are ahead. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. It's good whenever you have whenever you played those games and you're in close to first place or first place. That's good. That means everybody has to try to chase you in order to get those back, right? But there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some consternation as it comes down if the Galaxy don't fix this. My whole thing though, here is Kevin, is you talked about the backup and everything, and we've been talking about the LA Galaxy with transfer targets and everything that's going to happen here as the transfer window opens on July 18th. So we are 3 days away from the transfer window opening. We have known for a while now the LA Galaxy's prime target in this window is going to be Marco Royce. And that still seems to be likely, and I haven't heard anything that would wave me off or tell me that it wasn't. And I think I said it on Thursday that I would, at this point, we are in the I would be surprised if it didn't happen camp, instead of the surprised if it did. But it's not done until it's done, and even then, it's not done. So one of those to watch them bring in Marco Royce. Now, I believe,
you know what? If this was if the Galaxy were a Canadian team, he might already be here.
He could already be here. The Galaxy needed to go. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. By the way, we got a super chat from Charlie, $2 super chat. Saskatchewan FC 2024 Leagues Cup champions. That's what you need. You need Canadian teams into the Leagues Cup coming in. So
loaded up with transfers.
They got in before everybody else. It's like, hey, we can pay you the same amount of money and start a week earlier. That's how it is. We'll get you an extra week of pay as it goes. So thank you for that super chat. Appreciate it, by the way. So we've been looking at that. The part that I am interested in is, as Kevin, you have rightfully pointed out, is the LA Galaxy are in need of another striker. And if they are in need of another striker, are they going to go out and get a striker? Now,
Greg Vanning just talked about that, didn't he?
Well, I mean, whenever I'm the guy who asks him the question, it's a good thing to look at. I basically asked Greg, I said, you guys are trying to string some stuff together. You're trying to do, striker by committee now whenever you look at the Fagundes stuff and everything that you tried in this game. Miguel Berry maybe not the answer there. Are you guys thinking about, going for offensive reinforcements, particularly at striker? You need another backup in order to back up Joveljic. And he said this, it's something in consideration. Will Kuntz and the guys are figuring through our resources and what options are available, certain things we've talked about. So I think one of the things that I would put consistently in those things, it's been either like this week in the first game of the week, but unique conditions for us in the humidity and heat. So he goes on to sort of say what's happening. And this was where I broke out we've seen you guys have these problems in Dallas. We've seen you have these problems with Austin. We've seen you now have, problems with Chicago. And he went through, and basically Greg was very nice in saying he didn't agree with me that those 3 are linked and that we've seen. But if you go back and watch those games, common thread is the LA Galaxy didn't have Dejan Joveljic, and common thread was not a lot of offense created, and they lost all 3 of those games.
Billy Sharp.
No, he's old. What has he done? I asked you had time beforehand if you were going to bring him up to tell me what he's done this year.
Chicharito.
You're just going to name. No,
Carlos Vela.
There it was. That was the one that I was waiting for you to say. But the bottom line is, are the LA Galaxy going to go after, another striker? And we have been consistent on this show. I don't know what everybody else is telling you, but we have been consistent on this show telling you that it seemed unlikely the LA Galaxy had enough room. I'm not even sure the LA Galaxy have enough room to go out and sign a U22 player right now, even using that U22 with unlimited acquisition costs and everything else that is going on. So here's the deal. Marco Royce is the guy that they are clearly targeting, they want to bring in. I think the reason they're doing that is because they see that Ricky Puig likes to blow up a lot of their system, and that Marco Royce might fit in that system really well, and the combination of those guys together could be really dangerous for the LA Galaxy going down the stretch, and could possibly do something this year, but maybe it's looking more at next year. That's one. The other part of that is that if they wanted to bring in a striker, they would have to do something to get creative. I've had these discussions. I'm telling you, there's not necessarily room right now to bring in a striker and to be able to do that. So, Kevin, this is super interesting because Greg Vanney was in charge last year, right? Greg Vanney's the general manager, and he's the head coach, and he was in charge of everything from the soccer operations. And Greg Vanney's in a contract year. So if this was the last year and Greg Vanney was in a contract year, do you think the Galaxy shuffle some pieces around, trade some guys, create some space, and find a striker because Greg Vanney in a contract year wants to make sure that he gets the most out of this team possible, even if it means possibly harming prospects for next year because he doesn't have a job for next year. So this is more important. And is that different now? Are we in a different situation when you have somebody like Will Kuntz, who's not on a contract year, is able to sort of look into the future and be like, this is what I want to see in 2025, and I don't want to upset the apple cart in 2024, even if that means we don't get a striker and it doesn't quite work for us because we're setting up for 2025.
We talked about this before we came on the air, and you're absolutely right. When you look at these two people are working in different time frames. This is a big year for Greg Vanney. We talked about, in our estimation, he needs to make the playoffs, have a home playoff date, and win that game. That's the bare minimum. He needs to do all those things. And he's still in position to do that. It's not panic time yet, right. But he's under more pressure than Will Kuntz is. But when we talked about that, you were sort of, I took you to be leaning toward the idea of, let's build this for the future and let's not blow up the plan. We tried that before. Remember, we had the French connection and that didn't work. And then we went back to square one. Let's stick with a plan for a few years and see what happens. Will Kuntz has the ability to do that. But I also look and say, up until this little streak, this little poor streak of two losses in 3 games, this team, it looked like there was something special perhaps happening here. And sometimes when you have those special years, if you feel it's a special year, sometimes you do roll the dice a little bit. Larry Morgan out on Twitter just messaged me and said, hey, how about Zlatan? We know that he'll work for TAM money. Maybe bring him in. But
he's busy hanging out with Jovan Karofsky.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, probably can't make it. But, we talked earlier and you say be creative. I just have to throw out this possibility. We talked about if for the Galaxy to go far in the playoffs, to make it to the MLS Cup, they're going to have to go through LAFC at some point. And what if you did go out and you signed Carlos Vela?
No,
and
stop it.
Wait,
no.
because LAFC has said, we don't have enough money for you, Carlos, but we do have a boatload of money to go get Olivier Giroud. So you just sit there and you watch us from your Hollywood Hills home, and we're going to play with Olivier Giroud. So Will Kuntz goes over to his buddy Carlos and says, hey, you want to play the last 8 games for us? And then Carlos scores the winning goal in the playoffs to eliminate LAFC.
I wonder
that would be kind of a good storyline.
Do you drink heavily before you come on the show? Sometimes I wonder.
Drink afterwards.
Okay, I would imagine that's probably the case. 100%. No. Here's the thing is that I don't even think I pose that as if it's some nefarious plot that Greg Vanney. There's different motivations for different things. I think that Greg Vanney is a coach that says we might have a chance to win this thing, and we want it. And Will Kuntz, by the way, is not an idiot. He's also like, we might have a chance to win this thing, and I want it. But I also want to make sure that the move we make is the right move. And I think the Galaxy are in that position. I don't think, I know they don't have room for another striker without getting creative. That means they'd have to do something, move, bundle guys, move stuff around. Something would have to change. And by the way, you can't move Miguel Berry to get a striker. Like, it's not like somebody's going to take Miguel Berry and then you're going to get a striker. You can't just, when we're giving things up, we have to give away things that hurt a little bit, right? And so you sort of sit there. Possibility of maybe moving somebody like Gaston Brugman, although he's coming off an injury and that's a difficult sell to do. So there's things like that. Like Mark Delgado is on a contract year. You can move Mark Delgado and possibly bring in a striker that sort of fits in there. And because you got Marco Royce in there and you're going to depend on him and then you're going to go. Really tough to get rid of somebody like Mark Delgado, who's possibly one of the hardest working players in all of Major League Soccer and does tremendous things for this LA Galaxy team. He was subbed at halftime to come out and he's been, as Greg Vanney called it, he's been suffering a lot. And he goes, in with the heat and humidity and everything, he goes, I didn't need him to suffer anymore in this game. I very realistically believe the LA Galaxy shut this down in the second half of Dallas. And they were like, this is not worth it because we have 2 home games coming up, Wednesday and Sunday. Or Wednesday and Saturday, and those are really big games for us. This was a big game. If we could have jumped out early and gotten on it, that was fine. But, at this point, and by the way, it almost seemed like the way the Galaxy played, Kevin, that they weren't relatively, like, they weren't going to, this wasn't a max effort game for them, right? Which I know some people will just fall on the ground and clutch their chest and be like, oh, how could you ever say that? How could a team ever not try to win every single game and be completely destroyed for the midweek game? I'm just saying that that's what it looked like. And Greg Vanney made subs that sort of indicated that we're shutting this down. This is a game that for whatever reason isn't working, isn't clicking. We're going to shut this down. We're going to rest guys because we have games coming up on Wednesday and we have games coming up on Saturday that are super important. But if you are a fan of the LA Galaxy and you're expecting the Galaxy to go out and get a striker, I would say that's going to be a tall order. That feels like it's going to be a tall order, and you shouldn't just expect that. Yes, it's a position of need. The Galaxy may not be able to accomplish that this year with everything that they have going on.
When you talk about getting creative, when you look at one of the things about MLS is because they have 9 playoff berths in each conference, everybody thinks they're still in this thing.
Yes.
And most of the teams still are.
Yep.
And so what that means is, yes, we can trade within the league. And I have to admit, I don't know all the rules for that. I know there's restrictions and things, but you can trade within the league. So you don't have to look at this and say, hey, what European players are out of contract that could come to the Galaxy? You can look in-house. But so many teams think they're in it, they're not going to trade a valuable piece. One exception, San Jose. What if they wanted to get rid of Christian Espinosa or if the Galaxy wanted Preston Judd to come back? That's a team that might be willing to move some pieces if they could get some things that help them, because they're not going to the playoffs. They're the one team, I think, in the Western Conference that can write off the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, maybe you have to move somebody like Johnny Perez. Maybe that he's a prospect, right? And like you said, inside the league, that would be a really positive sort of thing. I think Johnny Perez has a future with the LA Galaxy. I think that he's going to get a lot of minutes if he can stay healthy. He was just starting to get minutes and then he got injured. But those are the things that you have to look for. If this comes down, and I don't think it's going to be quick if the Galaxy try to get a striker, but let's watch and sort of see how this plays out. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that so everybody understands where the Galaxy are at. Because the Galaxy know. Greg Vanney said, no, we see the same things. And, I've talked to other people. They all see the same things. Another backup striker would be great. But, when you look in your wallet and there's only $1 and your sandwich costs $5, you can't beg and borrow your way into a sandwich from Togo's. From Togo's. Well, I don't think that works in Major League Soccer. Yeah. That ruins everything for me if you say that you can just take it. That's not how that works. Except for Canada Soccer just changing the transfer rumors. It's like they just stole a Togo sandwich right out of your hand, Kevin. That's what it was. That makes no sense, by the way. I'm very well aware of it.
The Cali veggie with chipotle mayo. That's the go-to right there.
That's the Slogo's go-to. Yeah.
Yep.
I know. Okay. 100%. Let's see. Okay, we're not going to go through a whole bunch of stuff in terms of the stats and charts, but I did want to pull this one out. Galaxy still off to their 4th best start through 24 games, which is really interesting because the only years in the modern era that you really have is 2010. 2010 was a Supporters Cup winning year. You had 2011 Supporters Cup, Supporter Shield, and MLS Cup. Supporter Shield and MLS Cup. 2014 was another year that had 43 points at this point, so tied MLS Cup. You can look at that. 1998 had 52, but that was we're not going to call that modern era. So as much as people, and by the way, I see it in Discord. I know it's PTSD from the years past, Kevin. People see like the Galaxy lose a game, they're like, yeah, but it's back. They're gonna lose. But, the whole deal.
Go back to that chart for a minute because it's interesting. You pointed it out, but just to go back and sum it up. The only 3 years that this Galaxy team is either equal with or trailing in the modern era, all 3 of those teams were MLS Cup teams.
Yeah, it's significant. It's very significant.
That's why I think this is, you can make the argument that this is a special year and they have a chance to accomplish some things. Will Kuntz may look at this and say, no, it's the first of an era of multiple special years. Let's not blow it up just yet. And you can look back at 2010, 2011, look at those points where they were through. That was a 5-year span of special teams. Maybe Will Kuntz feels he's on the verge of something like that, and he's not going to sacrifice that for one season.
Yeah, super interesting to watch how that all goes down. But we're gonna keep watching, and we'll keep figuring out. One of the things to point out, the LA Galaxy, when they score first, they are now 10-1-2 on the season. When they score second or allow the first goal, they are 2-4-3. Significant. Outscored 17-13 whenever they allow the first goal, which is what happened in the Dallas game, also what happened in the LAFC game. And then they outscore their opponents 31-15, Kevin, more than 2-1 whenever they score first. It's a stupid thing we talk about, but it is absolutely important. If the LA Galaxy want to win on Wednesday night, I would suggest they score the first goal. Only once this year have the LA Galaxy scored the first goal, and not one. That was against Chicago, by the way.
And remember who they're playing.
Yeah,
the Kevin Cabral machine.
Kevin Cabral is rolling into town. He's 4 goals, 4 assists. He's flying high. So you got to keep an eye on that one as is. Let's continue with a little bit of cleanup. We talked about some of the stadium improvements that were coming in 2025. We saw the renderings, and we now have the renderings for that, so you can take a look at those on your screen. But basically, it is showing that there is a widened walkway at the bottom of the west stands, right, which is next to the press box where all the premium seating is. There's a bar there, and then there's seats that basically are almost right on the field. And then in that, they're going to carve out 2 of the benches for the teams as well. So those will be permanent seats, permanent benches inside of this new area that they are creating. So I believe that area is actually being expanded a little bit, it feels like, whenever I look at how much room is there to the touchline. But I don't imagine that the field changes shape or anything like that. I think it just moves a little bit closer. So this is a little bit better in terms of dropping things all the way down to the bottom. But still an interesting look. And of course, the cabanas are there. And then the coloring that you're seeing on this is blue and gray seats. You see a Quasar over at LA Riot Squad that matches the Quasar over at Victoria block. The upper seats in the overhead area in that 200 section on the east side, those are all gray seats. I believe those are already gray seats, so they're going to continue to be all gray seats up there. So, but the bottom line is no more green seats. They're gone, and no more benches. There will be no more benches in the entire stadium.
You know what? That looks like, look at that crowd. Looks like a Chivas USA game.
Way back in the day. I remember going to some of those. Well,
yeah, that's what it looks like. There's a few people there, but not very many.
One of the things, I think they were trying to show the seats, Kevin. I think that's why, if there's too many people, you can't see the colors of the seats. So they're, this is early.
Tailgating going on outside.
Yeah, of course. Another item that has popped up and shown, if you are aware of how the practice fields lay out for the LA Galaxy, it's right out there at the main entrance, those fields that cascade down towards, Avalon away from the stadium. Those are U.S. soccer fields, right? That's basically what has been going on and what we've been calling them for so long. But the LA Galaxy train on those fields, the U.S. soccer fields, as they go all the way down and cascade towards Avalon. There's 3 full-size pitches, all grass, that go all the way in that direction. Well, we are learning, of course, that the LA 2028 Olympics are starting to head in this direction. And so we got our first look at what Dignity Health Sports Park and the surrounding areas there would be used for. And one of the things is over those soccer fields, those practice fields that are out in front, are this field hockey stadium that they're going to be putting up. It's a temporary facility. It will be placed there, and so there will be field hockey games being played on those. So I wonder, we were talking, where did the Galaxy practice? And there are some practice fields usually on the very back side somewhere. So maybe for a couple weeks, the Galaxy might have to either go on the road somewhere to get out of everything that's going on, or possibly practice at some other fields that are out there at Dignity Health Sports Park.
You see the fields above the tennis stadium. By the way, Olympic tennis will also be there, and inside the stadium will be rugby sevens. But you see the fields atop the tennis stadium. That's where they practiced during the Bruce Arena time. They used those practice fields out there. They didn't move until after Bruce left. In fact, Kurt Onofo started on those backfields as well, and then they came to the U.S. soccer fields during Kurt Onofo's time, and they've been there ever since. But those backfields are where they practiced when Bruce was there, next to the next to the track stadium. So I would guess they'd go there. But you're right. I mean, there's going to be tennis. There's going to be rugby sevens. There's going to be
field hockey, and then velodrome.
The velodrome.
Yep.
The velodrome, which is that white building, also at the top to the right of, if you're looking at that picture, the velodrome is going to have cycling. So there just may be too much activity there for the Galaxy players and coaches and everything else, even to get in and out of that facility.
Yeah, really interesting though, by the way, whenever you look at what that whole area is going to look like. Possibly the main entrance there is going to be spectator walking, and there's going to be no, I don't know where everybody's parking for all this stuff, but it looks interesting how they're all setting it up. Really exciting. I'm excited that the Olympics are here. I know this is going to be a pain, Kevin, to sort of, go through all this, but I think it's going to be a really cool venue. This is going to be one of the largest sports venues that are sort of set up for the Olympics here, with so many different sports being played just at Dignity Health Sports Park. Like, as you said, rugby, tennis, field hockey, and then the velodrome for the cycling as well.
And in 2026, I think it's going to be a hub as well. The teams that play in LA are at SoFi, and SoFi is right next to Dignity Health Sports Park. Teams are going to need a place to train. And we know that people love training here because visiting teams, European teams, have trained here. When the Rose Bowl game happens and the Super Bowl, there's always a team that trains at Dignity Health Sports Park. There's, a nice weight room. There's medical facilities. It's close to a free. There's just a million different reasons why I think there's going to be a number of teams that are going to be the World Cup teams that are going to wind up training here as well. So this area is going to be very busy during the World Cup as well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Finally, we get some information on the All-Star game. And most importantly, because I think this is the most part, the All-Star Skills Challenge, where Ricky Puig has been named to the MLS team for the Skills Challenge. And it's all the passing and volleying and all the fun stuff that you're going to see during the Skills Challenge, including Goalie Wars is going to be there. The big addition, obviously, Ricky Puig, but former LA Galaxy player and MLS commentator Sasha Kleshin also joining up with the MLS side. So he'll be out there, and him and Ricky are going to team back up. You know, they love each other. I know lots of people see Ricky taking shots at Sasha Kleshin. I think that they know each other pretty well and that they enjoy the back and forth ribbing that goes on there. Otherwise, somebody's going to have to step in between those two if you get them on the field and they want to start arguing. But they like each other, so I don't think you have to worry about that.
No, but yeah. Sasha's about 8 feet taller and probably 50 pounds heavier than Ricky. I think we can wipe the floor with him.
How dare you say that?
Did we talk about last week? Did we talk about the Sasha Kleshin trivia question?
No. Which one was? Oh yeah, we did. The last
American male to score a goal in an Olympic game with 2 minutes to play in the last game in 2008. He scored on a penalty against Nigeria, and the U.S. has not scored in 16 years.
There you go. So, and that's something that possibly could change here. The skills competition takes place on Tuesday, July 23rd. Wonderful day, by the way. One of my favorite days of the year, July 23rd. Tuesday, July 23rd at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on MLS Season Pass on Apple, and then the All-Star Game is on Wednesday, so you can check that out all on MLS Season Pass for you. There's also more news in this, and that goes into Chicho Arango and his now exclusion from the MLS.
This makes him the luckiest man in MLS. You know, there's every player in MLS probably said, "How do I get out of the All-Star game if I get picked?" And he did it. He found out how to do it.
He was the league has suspended him for 4 games. Now it comes 2 MLS games, 1 All-Star game, and 1 Leagues Cup. I believe is exactly how it plays out in the 4 games. But it was for harassment.
So stupid. One of them is a friendly.
Yes,
he's suspended for a friendly.
Yeah, I don't even.
Nobody does that.
It's weird, but it was a harassment protocol, and I don't know what that means. And certainly MLS isn't going to go into it because they like to be as opaque as possible. But it's really interesting to see that go down. So if you're watching the Shield race, listen, the LA Galaxy losing actually ended up okay. LAFC lost, RSL lost. Everything worked out okay for the top teams in the Western Conference. So the Galaxy's still tied for that first place, but who's above them is Salt Lake. The current Golden Boot leader is Chicho Arango. He's going to now miss 2 league games, and that probably takes a pretty good hit for RSL in terms of what they're able to do and whether or not they're able to chase down the Shield. Not saying they're out of it. It would be different if it was 4 league games with the amount of games left. It probably should be 4 league games instead of I don't even know how you can count like saying you can't play in the Leagues Cup as a punishment or can't play in MLS.
If you
in the All-Star game.
If you can open the transfer window for 3 teams a week ahead of the other rest of the league,
right.
But you kind of buried the lead, right? Salt Lake plays LAFC this week, right?
Oh yeah,
well,
yes.
He's missing the LAFC game, so that is a game that one of the 2 teams the Galaxy are chasing
they're going to drop points, or they're both
playing the other team. Yeah,
absolutely. They could drop points. One of them could drop points. Both of them could drop points in terms of draws. So the game to watch this weekend, or this coming up as something that could be really interesting. Adam, $5 super chat says, "Do you guys?" And by the way, I like everybody. Thank you for reminding me about Adam's super chat. I was waiting till the MLS All-Star portion of the show so that way we could answer this. Adam, $5 super chat. Do you guys think there will be a replacement in the All-Star game for Arango and Messi? Messi gets injured in Argentina's Copa America win. That's also big if you're looking at the standings and everything that's going on and what that means for Miami going down the stretch. We don't know. I don't know that I've heard any severity yet or anything like that, but Miami, if on the Eastern Conference side, sitting in second place with 47 points, that's a team that has when they have everybody there, Luis Suarez and Messi and friends, as we should say, goes in. That without Messi, that team is probably worse. And we've seen that sort of play out throughout this year. I think Cincinnati just beat them 6-2 not too long ago, and that was without Messi and that type of thing. So
we've talked about that on this show. My prediction that Miami is going to have a hard fall these last games. They're not only missing Messi, but the rest of the team, they're just too old. I don't even know if Messi plays in Leagues Cup. And anybody who thought, Adam, thank you for the super chat, but anybody who thought Messi was going to come out of Copa America and go to the All-Star game. I don't think there's any way that was going to happen. Will there be a replacement? If there was, they've decided on this before, and you talk about how opaque MLS is, and they just haven't told us. I don't know.
Could it be? The big question here is, could it be Gabriel Peck? Because you're looking at a Chicho Arango, you're looking at a Messi, you're looking at guys on the offensive side on that top line.
Yeah,
could Gabriel Peck be one of those guys?
But they already have 30. Their roster is supposed to be 30 players. Liga MX, I think their roster is 26. Again, Canada versus the U.S. has something to do with the valuation of the peso, I think. Yes. I don't know why Liga MX has 4 fewer players. I think it has to do with MLS sponsors being there and wanting players from more teams. But I mean, certainly they could play the game and they'd still have a 2 or 3 player advantage. They don't need to replace those guys. But yeah, that's a good point. Some guys, they have contracts or bonuses or whatever related to making the All-Star game. So if Gabriel Peck would have something like that, it could cost him some money if he doesn't get picked.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to watch that. Alex Ruiz was one of the first ones who sort of said, "Hey, maybe Gabriel Peck," and I was with Alex on that. I think that was a good shout in there. But again, looking at the standings, the LA Galaxy sitting in 3rd place, tied with points on LAFC and Salt Lake. Here's the thing: like, you can look at it and say, "Hey, it was a good week to lose against Dallas," but whenever you go back and look at that, man, if you would have beat Dallas, you'd currently be in 1st place all by yourself, 3 points clear of the other guys. You could be in 46, which would put you only 2 points behind the Supporters Shield leaders right now, with Cincinnati at 48 points. That would have been a huge jump up for that. So there's always, as anything, sometimes it's okay whenever things struggle, whenever you struggle and you get away with it. You just don't want to be getting away with it here for much longer. And I know what you said, Kevin, in terms of maybe the Galaxy sort of falling into Leagues Cup and maybe struggling to get into Leagues Cup and stuff like that. Galaxy really need to win both of these next games to feel really good about the Leagues Cup break, and then not paying any attention to Leagues Cup.
But they're not must wins. Must say they're not must wins. Go back to the standings for a minute, because there's an interesting thing here. If you look to the numbers, and I don't know if people have been paying attention that closely. Galaxy are in the conference. Only one team, LAFC, has more wins, and only one team, Salt Lake, has fewer losses.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
It's not horrible, especially from all the years that you've sort of seen it. If we're talking about power rankings, by the way, Columbus is my new number 1 after watching them dismantle LAFC over the weekend. I was like, I don't know that I've seen a team fly around like that. If that is sustainable for Columbus through the end of the year, I don't know that anybody's touching Columbus the way I saw them play. I've seen Cincinnati play really well as well. I've seen Miami play well. I've seen LAFC play well. I've seen RSL play. But the way Columbus was able to boss around a team like LAFC, it looked like LAFC were planted in the ground. So for me, new number 1 for power rankings, Josh's power rankings, and I'll only give you the top spot, it's Columbus. And I would gladly take Columbus the way they were playing against any team in Major League Soccer, and I would imagine they'd win MLS Cup by 2 or 3 goals.
Yeah, I think the Eastern Conference right now is stronger. If you look at the Western Conference, LAFC, Galaxy, Real Salt Lake, and Colorado, I think there's a big drop-off after that down to Portland and the rest. Over on the Eastern side, I still think Miami's in for a big fall, but they're good. Cincinnati's good. You said Columbus. New York, they're kind of hanging around. They're not bad. New York Red Bulls, and the New York City a point behind them. The Eastern Conference just looks like it's a little stronger at the top. I do think there's a big drop-off between 4th place and the rest of the Western Conference.
Yeah, very well could be. Well, the other big news that's dropping tomorrow, that is the 16th, is the retrograde Tradition Reimagined and the Archive Collection. The retrograde kit will drop tomorrow. Now, I am here to tell you that there are special store hours. The LA Galaxy team store will be open at 10 a.m. and will carry the kit and some items from the Archive Collection, but not the full Adidas collection. This is listen, first of all, everybody just buckle in. The Adidas collection and how they're doing this Archive Collection, there's a lot of pieces to this whole thing. I think we mentioned there are roughly 62 pieces, and most of those are new. 47 pieces, I believe, are brand new pieces to this collection. So there's 62 pieces of the collection. Some of the Archive Collection, but not the full Adidas collection, will be at the LA Galaxy team store, and that opens at 10 a.m. The Adidas website will carry everything Adidas. So if it's an Adidas part of the Archive Collection, Adidas will have it. All right. And then MLSstore.com will carry everything Adidas and some pieces from the Archive Collection. And so there's going to be this mix and match and everything else. I hope everybody's been saving up their pennies. because I think it's going to be an expensive day tomorrow. I am expecting
a lot of pennies.
A lot of pennies. I am expecting that this new jersey, the retrograde kit, will be well received. We've all seen it. We saw it on the Rose Bowl game with that being plastered across the big screen. So we've seen it now. We know what it is. The retrograde collection and the archive collection coming to you, the retrograde kit and the archive collection coming to you on July 16th. So
how come we didn't do the breaking news thing?
It was not really. I mean, everybody sort of knows what's going on. I just want to make sure everybody knew what the timing was for all of this. But check for the team store, and I'm sure this is where I would implore you to go to our Discord. I know some of you are like, I don't need to be on a Discord. It's like AOL chat room from back in the day. If you were a fan of the AOL chat rooms, you will be a fan of Discord. But go in there. We have a creative retail section there, and we are getting up-to-date information on what's being released, where it's going to be released. We've gotten so much interesting talking points, and there's like feedback and back and forth and things that are going. There are people, and I know we said this on Thursday, there are people who are paying attention to this and doing this for fans. So if you like what they're doing, I would suggest you go out and support that, because the collections they're able to put together and all these things that are going there, it really does matter. We told you that, the Rose Bowl collection, Kevin, sold 2,222 items, which was the largest single collection one-day sales ever for the LA Galaxy. So they're putting out good stuff. You guys are buying it. And if you want to continue to see good stuff, this is one of those times where you vote with your wallet. If you like it and you see it, I would buy it.
By the way, if you're listening to this podcast, when you go to buy your jerseys and your kit tomorrow, you get a 10% discount, the Corner of the Galaxy discount. Just tell them Josh sent you. Yeah. And they'll put it on Josh's card.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, Josh's card declined. Oh, you were trying to get a keychain? Declined. No, I spend too much money doing this podcast. That's what I do. Let's get you now ready for the LA Galaxy versus the Colorado Rapids coming up. First 10,000 people in get that tech deck coming up. So you want to make sure that you are one of those people because everybody's excited. I've seen the pictures of it. I've told you need to be there. Wednesday night, it is the LA Galaxy versus Colorado Rapids. 12-5-7 LA Galaxy versus 11-8-5. Right behind them, Colorado Rapids. That's a 7:30 p.m. Start time with a 7:40 p.m. kickoff time. You can go back and see the LA Galaxy have 45 wins, Colorado 34 wins, 13 draws. And so that certainly is an interesting point to all of this. I will say, Kevin, just like going to Frisco is a horrible place that the Galaxy never want to play in, it is similar, actually, whenever you look at Colorado and what Colorado has been able to do to the LA Galaxy. This is not one of those places where the LA Galaxy have had, or not one of the teams where the LA Galaxy have had a lot of success against Colorado. I can go back. The last 7 home games for the LA Galaxy against the Colorado Rapids, the Galaxy are 2-4-1. That's right, 2 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, last 7 home games versus Colorado Rapids. They've had the Galaxy's number. They get down in this nice thick air next to the beach, and those lung busters are ready to go and run. And so if you're expecting this is going to be an easy game for the LA Galaxy, that Colorado won't put up a serious sort of challenge, then I would say you, friend, are mistaken.
Things are a little bit different. I think Colorado's been really bad for a number of years, and I think the Galaxy spent a lot of time looking past them, and that's why they struggled. This is a good Colorado team. This team is playing very well. New coaching staff. They have a new sort of culture around them. This is a good team. I don't think the Galaxy will look past them. I don't think they're going to just walk over them. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game, but I don't think that it's not going to be one of the trap games like I think it has been in the past. By the way, it's also homecoming night. Former Galaxy coach Dave Sarakin is coming back for this game.
That's right. You told me.
I don't know how much of a presence he'll have, but he will be there.
Well, there's also some questions about possibly manager of the year. 2 teams that were in the absolute dumps. You have Greg Vanney, who's coming out, and now, of course, you have. By the way, and why is he coming back? Dave Sarakin. I wanted to say, why is Dave Sarakin coming back? Look who's on the bench. Ian Sarakin. Oh, do they perhaps have the same name there, Kevin? Is that maybe why? Chris Armas.
No, his name is Dave, and the other guy's name is Ian. That's not the same name.
Totally different. Chris Armas, possibly one of the coach of the year candidates. Greg Vanney, possibly one of the coach of the year candidates. I love saying that just to watch how everybody gets heated in the the comment section. But absolutely true in terms of what they've been doing with the LA Galaxy and the turnaround that is possible for the LA Galaxy this year. So this game could be a decider on that. The crazy thing that I see too, Kevin, is that this isn't the last time the Galaxy still have to play Colorado again in Colorado in October. So this is just the first game of the two games that they're going to play against. When I look at this game, Kevin, I look at a Colorado team who is, luckily for the LA Galaxy, missing Jordi Mihalovic, who's off to the Olympics. I believe he's already left. He had 10 goals, 9 assists in playing last game for them. And he is one of the 3 overs, right? U23 players, but he's one of the 3 overs that they took to the tournament to play in that U23 Olympic tournament. So he hasn't been there. But we have seen some very good play from the strikers for Colorado, 11 goals, 4 assists. You have Cole Bassett in there with 7 goals, 4 assists. Kevin Cabral, we talked about, 4 goals, 4 assists. And then Zach Steffen in goal, 38 goals against. It's higher than what the LA Galaxy have given up. 77 total saves, 2,160 minutes, played everything, 11, 8, and 5 as the starter there for Colorado. This is a difficult game for the LA Galaxy. It is a Western Conference 6-pointer, and they're right behind the Galaxy. You could separate yourself from Colorado, or you could allow Colorado to creep a little bit in. Maybe the best case scenario is you separate. The okay scenario is that there's a draw on there, but you got to win your home games. I'm more worried about the LA Galaxy not winning home games than I am about the Galaxy winning any other games on the road from here on out. The home games are probably the most important part of that. Getting draws on the road is really good. So try to keep doing that on the road, steal points whenever you can, but you got to win your home games and win them out. And you want to be undefeated at home would be a really strong message to put out.
Well, we talked a lot about how the Galaxy played so many road games at the beginning that they were going to catch up, play a lot of home games at the end. That ends this week, by the way. They have 2 home games this week, and then when they come back from Leagues Cup, they have 8 games left, 4 on the road, 4 at home. So their home field advantage that they had in terms of number of games, that ends this week. And when you think about coming back from Leagues Cup, they have, again, 8 games left, 4 at home, 4 on the road. That's not going to be easy. 5 of the 8 teams that they play down the stretch have winning records right now. Mm-hmm. Atlanta, St. Louis, and Austin do not.
Right.
The other games they play, LAFC, Portland, Vancouver, Colorado, and Houston. They finish with Houston. So these games are important because, as you said, if they can get 3 more points ahead of Colorado, all of a sudden, some of these games, they can afford to stumble a little bit in September and October. If Colorado passes them and they wind up going to the break in 4th place, all of a sudden everything gets amplified a little bit.
Yeah, it's these are important. Watching it, I just like the mental space this puts the LA Galaxy in if they can win on Wednesday and win on Saturday against Portland. Portland, by the way, coming up hot too. So these are the important ones, as Kevin had pointed out. There's only 1 game, you mentioned it, Atlanta, only 1 game from the Eastern Conference from here on out. So that's it. You're not getting any more. They're all 6-point games whenever you look at it that way. So a really important one. Got to bounce back. I think it was Mauricio Cuevas who sort of came in and said, Maya always tells us that good teams don't lose 2 games in a row, right? And so the Galaxy need to make sure they don't lose 2 games in a row. That's super important for this team going against Colorado, but they have to be smarter, and they have to do it without Dejan Joveljic, and they have to figure out how to get a striker and offense put together. So I don't know if they can do all of those things, Kevin, and that's a big ask, trying to sort of patch things together or row across the lake with a broken boat, which is sort of what it feels like at this point without sinking. So need to keep their heads above water for the next 2 games.
So would you rather have Billy Sharp or Carlos Vela?
I would rather eat my own foot. I don't know. Do both of them come with walkers? Like, is that what we're doing with these? Like, why? Can you find? What?
I'm trying to get creative. You said get creative. I'm trying to be creative.
I think I'd rather Greg Vanny put boots on and go back out there at this point.
Robert Lewandowski.
That guy, or his cousin that you were mentioning before. What was it?
Frank Lewandowski. Well, I think he actually does have a brother named Frank, by the way. But Gareth Bale's not doing anything.
Well, I mean, Kevin, there's lots of. Who's not doing anything right now? Albert Pujols. He's not doing anything. You want to put boots on him and bring him out for a Galaxy game? Like, what are we saying? Let's just talk about guys who aren't playing soccer anymore. Hey, Robbie Keane's not doing anything. Let's get him some boots, right?
We know he's not going back to Israel, so he's available.
And
Dave Sarachan knows him.
Right, and Landon Donovan's not doing anything. You could probably get him to suit back. What about Robbie Rogers? We could just keep naming guys who are retired, and that would be fun. So,
Unfortunately, Pele died. He would have been perfect.
I mean, right now, I was going to say he might be as good as Miguel Berry. That's not
He's
nice.
almost as old as Billy Sharp.
I need to be nicer. I think Miguel Berry serves a really good purpose, but unfortunately that purpose is when the Galaxy are winning to go chase balls and tire out the defense to close out a game. I think he's perfect for that. He's got a lot. It's the fact he's not finding space. He's not opening up. The whole thing I've sort of looked at with Joveljic and what he does is he may not always score goals, but he's always involved. He's always pulling guys in different directions, and he's the threat. And Miguel Berry doesn't seem to be that. He's not pulling guys in different directions. He's not combining. He's not keeping plays going. So it's a big question for the LA Galaxy. Transfer window opening up. Marco Royce possibly on the way. I mean, what are we, 3 days away? Did the Galaxy announce Marco Royce on the 18th, or is it going to be after the 18th? And how many days is the over-under after the 18th till the Galaxy announce that, if that's going to happen? Because
if you were in Canada, he'd already be here. But it does what we talked about earlier. I do think that there's a curious thing here. Let's just say that they get to the 18th or the 20th or whatever, and Marco Royce is not announced. If that thing goes south or looks like it's going to take longer,
right?
Do you change? They won him for a couple of years. Do you change strategy and say, you know what, we really do need that striker right now. We're pretty good in the midfield. We're okay. We can make it. Let's go get that striker. Do they change plan? I mean, it seems like no. It seems like the answer is no.
Right.
But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I don't know. It's certainly something to watch. Galaxy are on the hunt for Marco Royce. We'll keep attention and pay attention to that. But as of right now, Galaxy getting ready to play Colorado on Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m., 7:40 p.m. is your kickoff time. MLS season. MLS Live. What is the MLS Season Pass? That's the name of it. Who knows anymore? I don't even know what it's called. But that's where you can find that game. And then we'll get you ready on Thursday as we come back, recap that game, and talk to you a little bit about the game on Saturday against Portland. Another very difficult game against a team that is flying high right now. So,
by the way, you mentioned Apple TV. They offered during the All-Star break, I believe, they offered an off-the-record meeting with executives in which we could not quote anything they say. We could not use any information presented to us in this off-the-record briefing. And I said, no. If you don't believe in your product well enough to tell us something that we can use, why do I want to come and listen to you tell me stuff in secret? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. It is what it is. Poor Miguel Berry's out here catching strays from me, and you're dunking Apple under the water. You got their head on. I know. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. As much as we work with the LA Galaxy to do stuff, it's not like they sit there and tell me like, hey, make sure you can't ask this question or you can't. We don't play that game, right? That's not how that works. They're like, nope, we can send whoever it is out and they're going to be able to talk. Like they can.
And you know how that works? If they say don't ask this question, that's the very first question you ask. Even if I wasn't even interested in it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, sometimes if they're like, hey, don't ask this question, I'm like, oh, cool, we're not doing the interview. Like I've never had to do that with the Galaxy, by the way, but that is the answer. We're not doing it. We're good. Thanks. Don't need it. So anyway, that's what we got. Anything else that you would like to get to?
I had nothing from the start. By the way, thank you for being here because I hate doing it by myself.
I made it. See what happens. My wife is back in town, so I got some supervision for the youngster a little bit. So we'll see if that maintains or whether or not she waves the white flag. He may still be up because it's only 9:13. As soon as I come out, he'll crash through the door. So we'll keep an eye. All right. I think that does it. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter and X, it's at KBaxter11. Head on over to LATimes.com for all of his writing. Headed to the Olympics here shortly, sir. We appreciate you. Send off as you're off to Paris. Make sure you get some croissants and some good bread and some crepes and all the good stuff that you get in Paris whenever you go, and try not to get lost in some of those streets. They're all turny and they're all pointed in different directions. It's a lot of fun. So good luck. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. And of course, head to iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, all those places where you can find our podcast. Tell your friends about us. We appreciate all your support. We appreciate the super chats. That does it for us tonight. The LA Galaxy taking on Colorado on Wednesday night, 7:30, 7:40 p.m. is your kickoff time. We hope to see you there at the game, and if not, we will catch you on Thursday night. From Kevin, the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh, Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching the Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, Goodbye.